About this is CNN senior digital correspondent Chris Moody, as well as CNN political commentator Tara Setmeyer. This was a group founded by former KKK leader David Duke. So, Chris, can he really say, I didn't know who this group was? Does that defense work here?
Well, first of all, politicians speak to a wide range of groups. That's true. However, and this could have been a staff mix-up, however, Steve Scalise had been in politics since 1996. He had been in this game for 6 years. He should very well know better. And so to go ahead and do this really is, there's very little, if not no, excuse for this. Also, this group's organization, their confab, had been in the news for some time. A baseball team was coming to travel to the state, and they had voiced concern about their minority players staying in the same hotel where this group was located. So this was in the newspapers locally. So he should have known about this, and someone on his staff or he himself should have not spoken there and called it out earlier.
And Tara, there's now this report, the Washington Post forced to report David Duke saying that Scalise was invited by his aide, with whom Scalise was acquainted with. So presumably you would expect that Scalise knows who this guy works for. What do you make of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that this was clearly a misstep by Scalise. I'm not going to defend him speaking in front of this group. I think that as a state rep, he probably put electability and trying to get votes over principle, which is something that Eric Erickson wrote today in his blog. And I happen to agree with that. This is what politicians do, unfortunately, and this happens on both sides of the aisle. Unfortunately, right now, race is the hot-button issue. And it's a slow news cycle, and now this is blown up, and this is what we've got. This is a nightmare for Speaker Boehner and for the Republican leadership going into the new Congress. This is the last thing that they need, is a controversy like this. It distracts from what the new Republican Congress is going to try to do. And I really do not see how Steve Scalise survives this, just from a pure optics perspective on it. Whether it's fair or not, I don't believe that Steve Scalise is a racist. I worked on Capitol Hill for 7 years as a communications director, and the office I worked for, we worked with Steve Scalise on issues. And Cedric Richmond, who is a black congressional caucus member, Democrat from Louisiana, said, I don't believe Scalise has a racist bone in his body, which I think that that's probably true. What this does show, though, it was probably poor judgment. And, yeah, I think his explanation for it is needs to be desired. And the statement that he issued just now, that statement should have been issued yesterday with that same level of emphasis.
Can we dissect that?
Yesterday.
Can we dissect that a little bit, I think, Chris, between what he did just issue and certainly weigh in as well, Tara. What we were hearing from his staff before was that he didn't know. And you're sort of explaining, you're giving context to, okay, if he's saying he didn't know, he sure should have known. I mean, this was a group that people know about at this time in Louisiana. That statement that was just put out, that we just read as it came out, it doesn't say he didn't know. In his words, he's not saying, I didn't know who they were. He's saying, I spoke to a wide range of groups. Do you make anything of that, or am I just reading... Am I just getting in the weeds?
Communication staff is not doing a very good job communicating with their staff here. I mean, this is, and with the member himself. They issued a statement.
Well, many of them wouldn't have been working for him, obviously.
Oh, he only had one legislative staffer at that time. And it is a much smaller shop when you're working with a state legislator, as opposed to someone in Congress. But again, he wasn't brand new. He had been in this game for a long time, and he knew the players in it. And so if he knew who this group was, as it seems to be that he was, that's a much different story than we had yesterday when he was just talking to a bunch of groups.
Yeah, and he certainly was well aware of who, go on.